June 2025. Explosions shake the skies over Tehran. Sirens scream in Tel Aviv. Missiles, drones, and chaos. This is not just another flare-up. This is war between Iran and Israel, and the world is watching. But what exactly happened? Why are these two countries attacking each other now? And could this spark something much, much bigger? Iran versus Israel, the 2025 war. Explained simply, to understand this war, you only need to remember three words: nukes, history, and fear. For decades, Israel has accused Iran of trying to build nuclear weapons. Iran says its nuclear program is peaceful. For energy, medicine, science, Israel doesn't buy it. Not for a second. In 2024, tensions reached new heights. Iran refused inspections. Israel ran covert operations. Scientists mysteriously died. Cyber attacks intensified. Then, in early 2025, U.S. intelligence leaked something shocking. Iran was possibly weeks away from building a working nuclear warhead. Israel saw it as now or never, and so they struck first. On the morning of June 13, 2025, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a surprise air assault targeting Iran's most protected military and nuclear sites. They hit Fordow, they hit Parchin, they hit Natanz, dozens of targets hundreds of miles inside Iranian territory. Israel used long-range fighter jets, drones, and, reportedly, electronic warfare to jam Iranian defenses. Iran's anti-air systems fired back. But it was too late. Within hours, black smoke was rising from critical facilities. Iran claimed over 220 people were killed, soldiers, scientists, and civilians. Independent reports say the number may be even higher. Iran called it an act of war and promised swift retaliation. Just 36 hours later, Tehran launched a counterstrike. Hundreds of drones, dozens of missiles, including some hypersonic. Israel's Iron Dome intercepted many, but not all. In Tel Aviv, a missile hit a residential block. 6 people died. In Haifa, emergency shelters opened for the first time in years. As the smoke cleared, one thing was obvious. This wasn't going to be a one-day operation. This was war. Iran's retaliation didn't stop with drones and missiles. Within hours, Iranian proxies across the region joined the fight. In Lebanon, Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel. In Iraq, Shiite militias targeted U.S. bases with drones. In Yemen, Houthi rebels threatened to shut down the Red Sea shipping lanes. It wasn't just Iran versus Israel anymore. It was becoming a regional crisis. Inside Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation. He declared a state of emergency. He vowed to defend the country at any cost, and he warned Iran more attacks would be met with overwhelming force. At the same time, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei gave a chilling statement. He called the Israeli strikes a declaration of war. He said, quote, "The battle has begun, and the enemy will regret this bloodshed." But the biggest wild card, the United States. Just hours after the first Israeli strikes, former President Donald Trump, now once again in office, held a press conference. Standing behind the presidential podium, he said, "Let me be clear. If Iran continues its aggression, we will respond directly." He announced that U.S. forces were being repositioned. An aircraft carrier was heading to the Persian Gulf. B-2 stealth bombers were moved into Europe. And nuclear submarines were reportedly in the eastern Mediterranean. The message was simple: don't even think about escalating this further. Meanwhile, global markets panicked. Oil prices shot up by 7% in 24 hours. Gas stations across Europe and Asia saw lines forming overnight. Countries scrambled to get their citizens out of the region. The UK, Germany, India, and others organized emergency flights. Even the Czech Republic announced a military evacuation for its nationals in Israel. In the United Nations, emergency sessions were held. Russia and China blamed Israel. The US and UK defended its right to strike. The Security Council failed to agree on a resolution. And all the while, the missiles kept flying. By the third day of fighting, over 500 people were reported dead. Most were Iranian, but dozens of Israeli civilians had also been killed, some in their homes, some in shelters. Hospitals in Tehran were overwhelmed. In Tel Aviv, families slept in underground garages. In Haifa, schools were closed indefinitely. This wasn't just a military conflict anymore, it was becoming a humanitarian disaster. While the world focused on missiles and politics, the real impact was being felt by ordinary people. In Tehran, hospitals were overwhelmed with burn victims and trauma cases. Doctors worked double shifts, some performing surgeries without electricity. Internet outages made communication almost impossible. Ali, a 10-year-old boy from the city of Qom, lost both his parents when a missile hit a nearby weapons facility. His uncle shared their story online, saying, "They weren't soldiers, they were shopkeepers. Now their son is an orphan." In Israel, sirens blared nearly every hour. Families ran to bomb shelters again and again. In Tel Aviv, an entire apartment block collapsed after a direct missile hit. One woman, Maya Levi, was pulled from the rubble after 8 hours, alive but with both legs broken. She later told Israeli TV, "I thought it was an earthquake, but it was war." At the same time, a new kind of battlefield opened up, online. Iranian and Israeli cyber units launched attacks on each other's infrastructure. Banking apps went offline. Government websites were defaced. A massive blackout hit southern Israel for nearly 12 hours. Iranian news sites showed fake footage of Israeli cities burning, AI-generated fakes designed to cause panic. Meanwhile, global social media turned into an information war zone. Fake news, propaganda clips, and deepfakes flooded platforms. Some videos claimed the U.S. had already attacked Iran. Others said Tel Aviv had been wiped off the map. None of it was true, but it went viral. TikTok, YouTube, Telegram, and X became battlegrounds for truth. Teenagers were analyzing missile trajectories while influencers posted day in the life under air raid sirens. And while all this was happening, tens of thousands were fleeing. Israel began evacuating civilians from border towns near Lebanon and Gaza. Iran moved military staff out of major cities. Airports closed. Flights were grounded. In the chaos, a group of Indian workers got stuck in Iran with no way out. Their families pleaded with the Indian government for rescue. It took 5 days for them to be flown home. The humanitarian situation worsened by the hour. Food shortages hit some parts of Iran as trucks couldn't move safely. Israel warned of water supply disruptions in the north, and all the while the missiles kept coming. Even as peace talks were being discussed behind closed doors, the war showed no sign of slowing down. As the war intensified, the world began to take sides, or at least to react. In Washington, President Trump called for what he described as unconditional Iranian surrender. At the same time, reports emerged that U.S. intelligence was preparing a possible precision strike on Fordow, the most fortified nuclear site in Iran. B-2 stealth bombers were on standby. Submarines with cruise missiles had moved into range. Trump's message to Iran was clear: stop, or we will finish what Israel started. Russia, meanwhile, condemned the Israeli attacks. President Putin called them a reckless provocation and hinted that any U.S. involvement could destabilize the entire region. Russian warships were spotted near Syria. China called for restraint, but warned against Western interference. The European Union was divided. France pushed for immediate ceasefire talks. Germany supported Israel's right to self-defense. The UK backed both. Inside the United Nations, chaos reigned. Emergency Security Council meetings were held and failed. No resolution passed, too many vetoes, too many conflicting agendas. Behind the scenes, diplomacy moved quietly. Turkey offered to mediate. So did Qatar. Even Saudi Arabia, once a silent rival of Iran, expressed interest in brokering peace. But neither side was ready to talk. Not yet. Back in Iran, Supreme Leader Khamenei vowed revenge, saying, "This is not a conflict over borders. It is a holy struggle." Israeli leadership responded with equal intensity. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant told reporters, "We will not stop until the Iranian regime understands. If you threaten us with annihilation, we will hit you first." And so the war machine kept turning. Military analysts warned of what might come next. One scenario: a limited regional war with a clear winner and loser, though neither side would walk away unscathed. Another: full-scale escalation. If the U.S. strikes Iran, Tehran could attack U.S. bases in Iraq, Bahrain, or even Saudi Arabia. Missiles could reach Dubai. Oil tankers could be targeted in the Strait of Hormuz. Or maybe the most likely scenario, a long, drawn-out conflict, low intensity but never-ending, like Gaza, like Syria, just bigger. One former CIA analyst put it simply, this war isn't about land or oil. It's about pride, fear, and power. And that's the most dangerous kind of war. Even if you live thousands of kilometers away from the Middle East, this war affects you. Oil prices are rising. Markets are shaky. Gas stations in Europe and Asia have already seen panic buying. Flights are canceled. Diplomatic ties are shifting. If this war spreads, if the US or Russia gets directly involved, it could spark the biggest global crisis since the invasion of Ukraine. But beyond the headlines and geopolitics, this is also a deeply human story. A father in Tehran searching through rubble for his daughter. A child in Haifa writing goodbye messages on her phone as the sirens scream. A medic in Erbil treating wounded soldiers from both sides, not asking who they fight for, only how to stop the bleeding. These are real people, living real lives. Now caught in a war they didn't choose. And maybe that's the scariest part, because this war didn't begin with tanks crossing borders. It began with fear, mistrust, and two governments who believe they have everything to lose. So where does it go from here? Best case scenario, a ceasefire is reached within weeks. Talks begin. Sanctions are lifted in exchange for nuclear inspections. Lives are saved. Worst case, all-out escalation, regional collapse, and a nuclear shadow hanging over the entire planet. Most likely, a long, bitter conflict that drags on in the background, one where both sides bleed, but neither surrenders, and we'll watch it unfold, in real time, through screens, headlines, and hashtags. But here's the question. What would you do if your city was under fire? If your family had minutes to reach a shelter? Would you stay and fight, or pray for peace? This war is far from over, but one thing is clear. The world has changed, and so have we. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to understand what's really going on. And let us know in the comments, what do you think happens next?